Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started here very shortly. I am just switching gears from work, so still getting set up here. All right, so what we're going to do is part 5 of the Chess Engine live stream series, and made quite a few updates since the last time I streamed, so hopefully we can review those before we continue. I hope everyone is doing well, and I also just upgraded to Big Sur, so hopefully there are no issues with the streaming. Okay, um, let's fire up Jupyter. So by the end of the last live stream, I believe that we had covered some piece movement, so sliding piece movement, and I had started working on the legal move checking. And then I kind of ran into a snag after the stream when figuring out how to do castling. But I've started to address that, so we can take a look at what I've done. I've also updated the project structure so that we can actually install this with PyPy. So if you take a look over at the repo now, it is structured a little bit differently. So the subdirectory wake contains all of the files that we've been working on, and then the notebook subdirectory at the root contains a few of the notebooks, and I've cleaned up some of the notebooks. So let's take a look actually at the notebooks. So we got to go up a directory here and then head into notebooks. One of these notebooks contains the newest, some notes from the newest code. Okay, so for the most part, things have stayed the same structurally. It's just that now we can say from wake.game, import game, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we'll restart the kernel and clear everything and make sure that the code is still working as expected. All right, so we have a game. We can get the current position. We've been through the bitboards a lot at this point. So just a quick recap. The board representation is, we're using bitboards for board representation. And I'm using a NumPy uint64 to represent the bitboard itself. And so we have bitboards for each of the piece classes on the white and the black side. Then I also use bitboards to do things like determine the squares that a piece can move to. And so we can look at all of those methods shortly. Then we also have a piece map. And I think since the last time I've also created a function to pretty print the piece map. So that using the Unicode chess pieces so we can see that. All right, so I've got a set of moves here. I've also updated the move constructor to remove the setting of the castling and is capture. And we may need to change that, but for now it doesn't look like we need to provide that as part of the move input. So we've made 5 moves here and we are in a Spanish position, and this bitboard is just the occupied squares bitboard. So another recap on the way the bitboards become useful here is that we can do bitwise operations on bitboards in order to extract more information, or useful information. So we can say things like position.board. And then here we have like the white pieces bitboard, and then the bitwise OR with the white pieces bitboard and the position.board.black pieces bitboard is in fact just the entire occupied squares bitboard. So if we were to look at the white pieces, we can see that. And if we were to look at the black pieces alone, we would see just the black pieces. And so as a binary string, this would just be 64 digits and a 0 everywhere there's an empty square and a 1 everywhere that there is an occupied square. So there are some properties on board that we can take a look at that are just basically syntactic sugar or getters over some logical combination of existing data. So we have Hey, what's up, Sri? Oh man, long time no talk. It's really good to see you drop in. I hope you're doing well. All is well here, and you're flattering me by saying that any of this is interesting at all. But thanks for thanks for dropping in. Sri is one of my favorite people who just dropped into the chat for a minute. Fantastic. All right, so um, the other the other thing that we can use bitboards here for determining the squares that a particular piece attacks. And so at the last live stream, we looked at generating sliding piece attacks, and there were some bugs with what I had done. But in short, the idea is that we have pre-existing bitboards for all of the different piece attacks, and let's just take a look at some older notes here for when that was initially generated. So this is more position. Okay, so this would be like a bishop attack from the square of c5. So we have the ability to represent this as a bitboard data structure. We have the ability to do rooks and queens. And if we think about the bitwise operations again, then queen attack bitboards on an otherwise empty board is just the logical bitwise OR of a bishop and a rook attack. We can see king attacks and knight attacks as well. So from any square, we can represent the squares attacked by a particular piece, just like this. So the trick to the legal motion of these is then realizing that we don't actually operate on an otherwise empty board. There are always going to be some pieces on board. And so we need to be able to create blockers at particular squares for these sliding pieces. Knights are a little bit different. Of course, it's still not a legal move for a knight if it's going to attack a square of its own type, of its own side. But if it attacks a square of the opposite side, then it is a capture or a potential capture. And then the bitwise AND will tell us whether or not it's a capture. So we can do a bitwise AND on the attacking piece with the opponent piece to determine that. But if we back up for a moment and go back to the sliding piece movement, if we think about, this was covered in the last stream, but if we think about pieces in the case of the rook here, so the rook is on c4, and if we had a blocking piece on c7, and say there's another blocking piece on c8, which doesn't really matter for the rules of chess. The rook can only go up to the piece that it's capturing. Let's say that it's an opponent's piece. But if we were to take the logical AND of the bitboard that contains the opponent's pieces on c7 and c8, the bitwise AND of that with the rook motion, we would get the two squares on c7 and c8. And so to get just the piece that the rook intersects with, this would be the piece that it would actually be able to capture, we have to do a bit scan from the rook's position. So we can just bit scan forward through the array until we hit the first piece of that AND intersection. And so that's taken care of. That's going to light up the square c7, and that'll tell us the rook's range of motion in this simple example. For the case of if this were one of our own pieces, things are a little bit trickier because we can actually only move up to c6 in this case. And there's a little trick that was implemented. This is in the chessprogramming.org wiki. And I'll let that load. Well, here we go. We can just go there. So we can check out the sliding piece motion articles for this. And while that's going, I'll make sure that the code is up and running as well. So sliding piece attacks. I'm doing the classical approach. I think there are some more clever algorithms to do this a little bit more quickly sometimes, but okay, so here's an example of the way that it's been implemented in our code so far. Here's an example bitboard with occupied squares. And then the bishop's target attacks, or the bishop's ray attacks from G2 here is this array, northwest from G2. So this would intersect, if we did a bitwise AND of occupied and northwest from G2, we intersect A8 and C6. That's this square and this square. If we XOR northwest from C6 with that bit scan, then we get these pieces. Or sorry, well, we actually get the final northwest attacks, which we have here. So here's our northwest, and if we XOR that, we get the final northwest attacks. So that's been implemented. And then I ran into the situation where we have this is legal move, which is going to need to be rewritten. And so the way that where this is getting called from is in the make move method. So in position.py we have make move, and the first thing that we do when we try to make a move at this point is check whether or not it's a legal move. Because we have representations for the way that every piece moves from any given square, with the exception of castling, and I believe en passant, but we have provisions for en passant and promotion. So there's these like special cases that we need to program for. But in the majority of types of moves we have rules for, and we have ways of establishing whether or not it is a legal move. Just needs to be implemented now. But so we check if it's not a legal move. If it isn't, then right now I'm just printing and returning. Otherwise, what we're doing is we're updating our piece map, and I should show that we can print the piece maps now. So let's take a look at that. We have pprint pieces. So I did implement this. So that's a little bit nicer to look at, like a traditional chessboard. This isn't using the bitboards. This is an alternative representation of the board that we're tracking from the piece map, and then reconstructing it here just with the Unicode chess glyphs. Okay, and at any given point in the game, these two should match in terms of at least showing the occupied squares wherever there is truly a piece. But from the bitboard, we also get this other interesting information, so we can see stuff like the attacked squares by white. And I had to do this because of castling. So the rules of castling are basically as follows. So if we're white and we want to castle, I should pull up Lichess so we can look at a proper chess GUI as well. Also, if anyone wants to play chess, feel free to challenge me. Looks like my internet's a little slow at the moment, but no problems there. I guess I could turn off Spotify. Okay, so let's open an analysis board here. And so what I want to do is be able to code castling at this point. So the rules of castling are pretty simple. So if we're white here and we want to castle on the next move, we can do that. Let's say if black just moves here, we can castle. And so the way castling happens is you move your king, in this case Kingside Castling, to the right 2 squares. So we move our king from E1 to G1, and the rook comes around to F1. And that happens in one move, and that move is called castling. And so typically you want to do this to get your king out of the center of the board and put it in a safer position. But you always castle. So for one thing, if at any point during the game we move our king, and then we come back here and let's say black castles, I can't castle now. So you can see I can only move to the F1 square. And so we've lost castling rights. And so you have castling rights as long as your rook or the bishop that you're castling with have not moved yet. Once either of those two pieces move, we can no longer castle for the remainder of the game. Okay, so that's step one. So with our engine, we have to track whether or not we still have castling rights. And I believe that we're tracking that currently on the board object. Let's see where we're tracking that. I guess I could actually grep for this really quickly. Okay, maybe it's actually not even represented yet. Yeah, so we're not representing that yet. We need to track castling rights for the given side. All right, the next rule that we have to keep in mind for castling is that we can't move through a square that is under attack by an opponent's piece, and we can't move into check. Clearly, if we could move into check, then that would just be, well, that wouldn't be possible because, like, technically that would be checkmate on the next move, right? Even though it's, yeah. So we'd be in check, and then it would be our opponent's move, and they could capture the king. So in a way, that would be like saying that we would allow checkmate. So we can't castle into check, and we can't move through a square that our opponent guards. So let's set up another position where, all right, so, okay, we'll just play some kind of weird moves here so that we can demonstrate an example. All right, so a couple things here. I'm in check now. Hey, Amin, good to see you. So we're in check now, and I can't castle when I'm in check. So here as white, we'd have to move out of check, and now we've lost castling rights. So we can't castle when we're in check, and it's also the case, like let's just play some complete nonsensical moves here, just to illustrate the point. All right, none of this is actually appropriate moves. I'm just going to move the pieces so that black is now attacking a square that. Okay, so now you can see that the bishop attacks the square on g1, and so we'd be castling into check if we tried to castle here. So as part of the rules for castling, we have to take into account the squares that our opponents are attacking. Likewise, if for some reason we had some other ridiculous set of moves here, and let's just move the black bishop out of the way just to demonstrate. All right, so now there's nothing attacking g1, but the white bishop on a6 is attacking f1, and so we can't castle through check either. So the whole point of all this is just to say that we need to know what pieces our opponents are attacking, which is why I've been working on this attacked squares bitboard, to know whether or not we can castle. So before we can say that it's legal for the king to move from e1 here to g1, we would need to, in effect, in this case, do the bitwise AND of the potential king move to g1 with the white attacked squares. And if any bit in that bitboard is hot, then we can't castle. So that's going to be my approach. And then all those same rules also apply for what's called Queenside Castling, which is when the king would move 2 squares to the left along the queen side, and then the rook would come around to d1. So again, just to demonstrate maybe what that would look like, we'll play some more pretty nonsense moves. Yeah, it does not matter too much what's happening here. This is not intended to be particularly realistic. So let's say black castles, white goes here, and I don't know, black starts attacking here. So I can also now castle queenside. I mean, it's 2 a.m. You should get some sleep. Yeah, thanks, and it's good seeing you. All right, so queenside castling looks like this. The king always moves in 2 squares, and the rook always comes to 1 square to the opposite side of the king. So that's queenside castling. And the same rules apply. If there is a black piece that's attacking any squares that the king would move through, so d1 or c1, then we wouldn't be able to castle on the queen side. So I think as part of checking whether or not it's legal to castle, we can use that bitwise and from attack squares into the potential king moves. Where this kind of came into some trouble with what I'd implemented originally was my is legal move check was effectively checking at the time of, how was the original legal move check working? I was looking at all the possible squares the given piece could move to, the given piece that you're attempting to move. And if that intersected with the squares that it could potentially move to, if those squares were open, then we would be able to move our piece there. That's pseudo-legal move checking. In other words, we're not actually also checking whether or not our king is in check when we do that. That'll come later. But what I needed to do instead was to rename those rather than checking at move time whether or not that was a legal move. I decided to create these methods which instead just update state on the position to say update legal piece move. So we have update legal pawn moves, update legal rook moves, queen moves, and there's definitely some duplication here because the queen moves are a logical OR of the bishop and the rook, and update legal king moves. So all that's been implemented, and now what I need to do is when I'm saying update legal king moves, I think what I need to do is to include in legal king moves the castling moves if they are legal. And to do that, I also need to know all of the pieces for the opposing side as well. So that's where we are this evening, and I'm going to start the timer. I have 2 hours here, but I just spent 20 minutes. I intended to start this earlier, but I've spent the last 20 minutes catching up. So the idea is to go for a couple hours and probably play some chess in between. So if anybody wants to play chess, feel free to challenge me at Westman on WeChess, and we can play a game. All right, so let's see what we have going on here. Also, I'm in a new branch called Castling because this was a pretty big change, I would say. All right, so we have our position. So when we make a move, this is what we need to do now, is to say if it's not a legal move, then we're going to return, and this is what we need to implement. Update legal moves is called when. So let's see. Currently it's called in make move, and what I'm doing is saying for every piece in the piece map, basically wipe out the attack bitboards and update legal moves for all the pieces in the piece map. This happens after we check whether or not there's a legal move. So upon the last move having been made, we can then attempt to make a subsequent move. So we need to make sure that all the attack bitboards also get updated. Doesn't really matter, but at the beginning of the game, there's no move that we can even make that would be blocked by an opponent piece. And there are 20 moves at the beginning of the game. Okay. So let's go back down and check out is legal move. So naively, I'm thinking if move that piece. in piece.whitepawn, piece.blackpawn. We can make this a tuple. Right now I need to check if this is a legal pawn move. And the only things that can determine whether or not there's a legal pawn move is the to square and the from square. And the state of the board, which we have. Do we know the to or from square before we come here? Or do we know anything about it? No, this is just happening directly in make move. So like I imagine the first thing that we check here is whether or not the move from square intersects with the current side's pawn bitboard. So we'll address that in a moment. Move that piece in piece dot white bishop, piece dot black bishop, return is legal bishop move. Sorry. White rook, black rook. White knights, black knights. Sorry, I did this bug last week with the K instead of the N. And here, instead of rook, we have knights. And then what do we have left? We have the queen and the king. So let's do the queen. We'll say is legal queen move. And then is legal king move. Sid Hunt asks, if you wanted to set up from my GitHub repo, how can you tell in a summarized way so that I can create a PR for documentation? Oh, that's nice of you. So I'll show you how to set that up in just a minute if you want to do that. All right, so we'll revisit this before I open up the Git repo. Let me just add methods for all of these. This legal knight move. Is legal queen move. And his legal king move. All right. How did my IDE know to put that in the move legality checking section that I made? That's pretty, either that's like super lucky or the IDE is way too smart. Oh no, never mind, it didn't. All right, so we're gonna put it back up here. And we'll just put it under here. The is wrong piece rule is pretty straightforward. You just check whether or not the move color to move is not in the white pieces or the black pieces, and these are basically just lists or sets technically over in constants. All right, Sidhan, if you want to get the GitHub repo set up, all you need to do is head over to github.com/westoil/wakeengine and go ahead and clone this. So you would you would clone it, and then you would fork it. Actually, you could fork it, and then you can make a pull request into my repo. So you would point your pull request back up to the original origin, which in this case would be in my repository from your repository. And if you want a really in-depth Git video on doing forks in Git, I did one on my channel recently within the last 2 or 3 months. There's a video specifically about forks and pull requests. So feel free to check that out. But hopefully that gets you started. So you would just create that file, on your fork, and then make a pull request. If you wanted to make some type of documentation, then you could make a pull request back into the original. Okay. Bitboard helpers. I've also added doc strings to everything. So in the event that you're trying to understand what a particular method does, I do have doc strings for all of the methods, at least in Bitboard helpers. All right, so first of all, we know it's not a legal pawn move if the 2 square does not currently contain a pawn. And probably I should, I was asking about setup with Python files. Okay, if you want to clone the repository down and then you want to install Wake locally in editable mode, that's a good call, I should mention this. And you can run pip install -e dot in the root directory, well, the directory where setup.py is found. So if we move into, where is my setup.py file? Oh, sorry, up a directory to the root where we have setup.py, you can do pip install -e dot. You may want to set up a virtual env as well. And I have a venv set up here on mine, so I could do like virtual env -p python 3. That would give you a new python 3 virtual env, and then you could do pip install -r requirements, which I don't even have. It's just numpy. The only requirement is numpy. And then pip install -e dot is going to install Wake editably in editable mode, which should allow these imports to work in the various files. That's a good question. Okay, let me try to focus for a moment on the is legal move. So I feel like I need to actually also pass. What else is on move? Let me just check really quickly. Move.py. Let's head back here. So we just have piece from square to square is capture, and when is legal move gets called, we pass the whole move object in. Then we basically branch on piece. So the first arm is legal pawn move self. So what we can say is the pawn bitboard. We don't have the color at this point. No, thank you, Siddhant. That's nice of you. So I think I'm going to pass the whole move into here. there's going to be quite a bit of inefficient code in v1, but we can say if piece is move dot piece dot, wait, what am I looking at here? If move dot piece is equal to piece dot white pawn and self dot board dot white pawn bitboard intersected with the move to square. All right, so current square. So this is the logical and now. And current square is, we can do make uint 64. All right, so we're going to do bb is make uint 64, and then what we're going to say is bb bb set bit on bb move dot from square. So let's do it this way. Make uint 64. So now we have a bitboard representing the from square. And basically what we want to say is that from square is moved out from square. That's the current square. So if current square bitboard basically, if this is not the case, return false. So it's not a legal move if the piece isn't actually on the, if the pawn isn't in its own bitboard, then it's not a legal move, and then we don't have to check anything else. Likewise, and I'm not thinking through this in the most efficient manner, but the next thing I want to say is that if the pawn isn't in its motion bitboard, then it's also false. And I'm sure there's a way to combine all of this stuff, like the motion bitboard and the everything. All right, so but if move that piece is equal to, let's just do it this way for a second. So if we have a white pawn and it's not part, the from square is not part of its current bitboard, then return false. If not, self.board, actually it's going to be self.get, what do we have here? I need to find the pawn motion bitboard. Self.board.pawn motion bitboards. All right, and that's a dictionary of bitboards from any square. So that should just be constant lookup time self.board dot white pawn motion bitboards at the move dot from square intersected with the move dot to square, return false. So we can't move to a square that is illegal to move to if we are a pawn. The pawn motion bitboards also already take into account whether or not there is a blocker, I believe. Let's double check that. White pawn motion BB. We handle en passant targets. We handle occupied squares. So we have these own piece targets, which are occupied squares for the color to move, either white or black. And basically, we update the legal moves by anding the legal moves with a complement of own piece targets. So this is saying and not own piece targets. So we effectively zero out the bits for the intersections with our own pieces. Pawns are tricky because they're the only piece that moves in a way that's disjoint from the way that they attack. Let me get some tunes going here. Okay, so let's head back to isLegal pawn. While I did add docstrings to bitboard helpers, which should be relatively complete, I did not update docstrings in position, which is going to be crucial at some point because there are a few, but it's not as complete. And position's kind of a mess as well. There's a lot of duplication going on. But the goal is to get to a bug-free board representation to begin with, and then I'll work out some of the inefficiencies. All right, so isLegal pawn move is saying that if it's not a pawn, it's not a legal pawn move if it's not part of the pawn bitmap. And if it's not part of the pawn motion bitmap, the 2 square is not part of the pawn motion bitmap, then it's false. That already takes into account collisions with own pieces. How do we check to make sure that if it's a capture, it's only the opponent pieces that we capture? So I have legal attack moves, and we also IOR the en passant move into that if there's a en passant target set, so that part's fine. So we have black attacks. And this is legal attack moves. So I need to figure out where I set white pawn attack BBs. Only here. Okay, so white pawn attack BBs and black pawn attack BBs are static bitboards that are generated when the game starts, because it's only dependent, the motion with which we attack is only dependent on the square that we're on, but whether or not it's legal is whether or not there's an opposing piece in that square. So that's the part that needs to be handled here. So I need to filter down the legal attack moves by those that and with opponent piece occupancy. And I like handling this here at the update so that we don't need to calculate it on the fly. So what we do is we would say legal attack moves. See, I want to do something like this. Color.white, move from square. And equals self.board dot black pieces bitboard that should filter down white's legal attack moves and then black's as well. It's just the opposite color. Does that make sense? So we have our legal attack moves as a dictionary of color to the static white pawn attacks or the static colors pawn attacks from their move square. And all we're saying here is that the only times that the legal attack moves actually are legal is when, in other words, the only time we actually can move to those attacked squares is when there's an intersection with the opposite color's pieces. And so I think that's what I'm saying here. Then legal attack moves. En passant. All right, so if we have an en passant target set, the en passant bitboard is an empty bitboard. The en passant, or the current whatever bitboard gets passed here with the en passant target set to hot. En passant move is legal attack moves for the particular color intersected with the en passant bitboard. If we have an en passant move after that intersection, then legal attack moves gets IOR'd with that bitboard move and just gets added because we have to add the en passant square. Okay, I don't think that's broken, but it very well could be. All right, so we're going to come back to his legal pawn move. Maybe I'll play chess every half-hour break. Okay, if not, self-board out white pawn motions bitboard, return false. If now here's where I kind of need to know if it's a capture, right? Because this clause actually doesn't hold true in all cases. So we're saying if the square is to move to another square and we're not bitboards moved out from square, because the move.to square here could be one of our pawn captures. So we basically have two clauses here. We have this, which I should extract to a function so that it's easier to read, or self.board.white pawn motion, white pawn attack, BBs at the move.from square. And isn't this actually set already? So don't I just have the white pawn motion BBs? What did I call this? Oh man, I'm losing track here. Is legal pawn move. Update. Let's head down here really quickly. self.board.white pawn attacks BBs. Okay, let's go back to is legal pawn move. Anyway, if we're trying to move to a square and we're not intersecting with the legal moves of the pawn, or we're trying to make an attack and we're not intersecting with the attack squares, though I don't explicitly have the notion of that we're trying to make an attack, if you will. Doesn't feel like we need it, but maybe we do. Anyway, so if the white pawn attacks BBs from the move square, let's just bump this down so it's a little bit easier to read. Doesn't intersect with the move.to square either. Return false. Almost think that I should probably code this in like the affirmative, so I should say like, given that either one of these is the case, then you can move, but sometimes it's easier to think about what you can't do, which is a lot larger than what you can do. Okay, so here we just replace white with black. Yeah, and this could be a dictionary, right? So all right, my IDE is going to be upset that there's a bunch of duplicated code. But that's okay for now. All right, so I think we have legal pawn moves, right? I'm not handling promotions yet. I get that. So with this in place, let's see if we can. We're just going to return true from the rest of these. And then just one at a time. Update them. All right, so this is a type of move, and this returns a bool. Then we use this up here. This gets used up here. So let's head back to the Jupyter Notebook and then I'll play some chess. So let's go back here. We don't want to make all the moves, but I'll just go ahead and restart the kernel. Jupyter's been a really nice platform for debugging, actually. And the other thing I noticed is that PyCharm actually has built-in support for Jupyter Notebooks, which is pretty impressive. So this is kind of cool as well. All right, so let's go ahead and do this, and I'm going to stop this one just for the time being. All right, so we have a bunch of moves. Let's just make the first move, which is a pawn move, and then debug any problems that we have with it. All right, so it's saying it's an illegal move, so let's figure this out. Maybe because it's the first move and we haven't updated the boards yet. So when do we update the boards? We update them as soon as we make a legal move. I feel like I may need to initiate the update legal moves at the start of the game. I suspect that's going to be the problem. Oh, nice, Adhan. I didn't know that VS Code had built-in. Yeah, Code is a really nice editor. I wonder if Emacs has it. Probably. I've got to spend more time in Emacs. Okay. So let's try to debug really quickly why we're getting a legal move. Okay, so score not in motion or attacks. So one thing we can do here is see if we've populated white pawn motion bitboards. So what I'll do is I'll pretty print bitboard of self.board.white pawn motion bitboards. Now when we run this, we should see a picture of what the white pawn motion bitboards are. By restarting the kernel, I'm just refreshing the code that is loaded. Ah, okay. So we're not actually... Is this not actually a bitboard? Bitboard, sorry, yeah, move that from square. All right, let's try that again. Okay, well, we have correct legal moves, it looks like. So the question is, it still thinks that it's an illegal move. And note here that for some reason it didn't say, oh, did I remove the check? I did. We're anding the move to square, but here we want to and the current square bitboard. So the move to square is just a number, and that's going to be like, that will be represented as a unt64 in some way, but it's not the intended representation, obviously. So like just to demonstrate what was happening there, if I do np unt64, I just use this constructor and I type in some number like 1 through 64. So let's just type in like the number 23 here. and then I do pprint bb with some number, and we import numpy. Then I'm going to get some representation right, but this isn't saying what I was basically doing was saying like use this bitboard. But what I was really looking for here was something like this, from make dot bitboard helpers, or bitboard helpers, I think it is. What do we have here from, can I say make? Make, a much more useful piece of software than wake. From wake.bitboard helpers, import setbit. What I really want to do is this. Move bitboard is a new uint64, doesn't matter what it is. Well, it does. We're going to make it an empty. And then what we need to do is set bit on the move bitboard at square 23, or at index 23 in the binary string. Then print this. What happened here? Oh, sorry. Move bitboard is equal to. All right, so now square 23 is that. That's the difference between this and saying just print the bitboard for the number 23. All right, so we could also illustrate this much more clearly by also importing binary string, whatever I called this method. Make get binary string. There's a helper in here just to show the difference here. So get binary string of 23 is obviously going to look different than get binary string of a 64-bit uint that we set the 23rd bit to be hot. Actually, maybe this function just prints itself. It does. So let's do this and this. So we can see the difference here now. Okay, so bug fixed, I think. Let's go ahead and restart the kernel. Make a move. All right, so we're still getting illegal moves. So let's figure this one out now. We know that we're in the white pawn bitboard. All right, so it still thinks that the square is not in motion or attacks. Oh, that's because it needs to be the moving to square bitboard, move that to square. A little bit slow this evening, obviously. All right, hopefully this one works. I'll remove the debugging. All right, so now we get a different invalid index to scalar variable. So we're trying to index in here. Move from square itself is probably a bitboard where we need an int. What line is this on? 396. Okay, so here it's actually just intersect with the opponent pieces. Let me think about this one for a second. Do I have a global attack moves for the pawn? I do. So I'm going to do this filtering where I have access to the 2 square. I just said I liked it upstream, but it works here as well. So here I'm going to say if self.board.white pawn attack bitboards move that 2 square and not shouldn't have to look that up here, right? Because I have the white pawn attacks and not moving 2 square bitboard. Hold on, let me think about this for a second. No, what I want to say is if pawn attacks intersects with the moving 2 and not self.black piece bitboard, so that's going to be self.board.black pieces bitboard, return false. Okay, so basically it's a legal pawn move. Let's just recap what we have here so far. We have the current square and the moving 2 square as bitboards. If we're moving a pawn, if we're moving a white pawn, and it's the current square that we're moving from is not a square that's currently occupied by a pawn, then we can't move. That's false. If not the white pawn motion bitboards, so the forward motion of pawns and the moving 2 square, or the white pawn attacks bitboards and the moving 2 square bitboard, so that could obviously be simplified, return false. So I should also just extract a helper function here. Def is not pawn motion or attack. And we need the 2 square. This would be return self.board.white pawn motion. We'll do the color as well. If color is color.white, white pawn attack bitboards, 2 square, and moving 2 square bitboard. or self dot board dot white pawn attacks bitboards 2 square and moving 2 square bitboard. So we should be able to OR these together actually. So we could say return this or this. If there's not an intersection there, then return false. And then black is just the inverse. So we'll just string replace that really quickly. Okay, so can reformat this. This could be a function, I believe. Also, PyCharm is not very good at reformatting. So now I'm going to replace this big clause here with if not self dot if self dot is not pawn or motion attack move dot 2 square. Here we should have the color on us, right? So if self.color to move is color.white, self.color to move is color.black. All right, so if it's not a pawn in the square, we're moving from return false. If it's not intersecting with our motion or attack bitboards, return false. If in this case it would be intersecting with one of those, and so we have the case where if white pawn attacks and are moving 2 square attacks and we're not intersecting with one of black's pieces, then we return false. In other words, if we're trying to attack and the square that we're landing on doesn't logically intersect with a black piece, return false, otherwise return true. All right, I don't even want to add docstrings for these methods. I kind of just want to finish them and tuck them away. But let's go ahead and restart the kernel. Pawns are really probably the trickiest piece in the game. Is that true? Just for the fact that they promote, they leave behind en passant squares, en passant target squares. They attack en passant, and they attack disjointly from the way that they move. That's probably why I would say they're the trickiest pieces in the game. And they promote, if I didn't say that already. All right, let's make a move. All right, so we were able to legally make a move, and our squares look appropriate. So now we should also be able to actually p-print the pieces. And I can't remember what I need to pass pieces. Just the piece map. Should probably make this a method on the position itself. But look at that. There's our white pawn. Okay, so legal move checking is working for pawns at least somewhat. Pseudo legal because we're not doing checks for king in check. Sudo. How do you spell sudo? Why can't I spell sudo legal? Pawn move checking. Everything else is getting just true. And this shouldn't actually break anything else, so let's just double check that. Nice. Everything else appears to be working as well. I'll get rid of the notes about the bitmap. So crucial to castling once we get to the king motion is going to be whether or not the proposed motion intersects with attacked squares. So the king's the only piece that can't move based on attack squares as opposed to just occupied squares. And I suppose once we get to the king as well, it'll be time enough to add the actual king in check, which would be intersecting the opposing side's attacked squares with the position of the king. And when that's the case, the rules change in that we need to make all moves illegal except moves that get the king out of check, which could include moving the king to a safe square or blocking with a piece. So it gets, I think there'll be some more tricks to figure out. All right, I'm going to take a break and play a minute of chess, play a 5-minute game, I think. All right, I should make one of these series like Road to Lichess 2000. That would be my goal. Oh, did I already start the game? Sorry about that. All right, so my opponent's going to play a modern opening or Pierce. So I think knight f3, a lot of times d6. Knight f3, knight f6. This is interesting because I can gain a tempo on the knight with e5. And his bishop is also sort of biting down on granite if I set my center up this way. So we're transposing into a sort of Alyekin's defense where this knight gets chased around a bit. It's not really the Alyekin's, I think, with my knight on f3 before his knight gets to b6, because there's the 4 pawns attack where f4 is possible. So here's an example of an en passant square. So d6, in terms of our chess engine, would be the en passant target square. Okay, the question is, I think I want to keep the center closed. He hasn't finished development yet. So the question is, do I open the center? Do I keep it closed? Or do I just play for my own development? I think either way I can get a strong center because I could... It's kind of lame to probably trade off his knight, which has been moved around a lot. But now I feel like my center is strong and I have a target on c4. So I'm just going to continue development before I castle myself. So now he's going to try to play b5, so I'm just going to try to prevent that. Then I'll castle, and then my idea is just to play queen d2, bishop h6. So his knight's going to come to b4 now. So he's probably wanting to route his knight from... My double click isn't working, from there to there, which is looking like a good square for it. But I'm going to put a rook on b1. And no longer going to put a rook on b1. So he still has this idea. want to get rid of this bishop. He hasn't played e6. Oh, now the bishop has a nasty square. So, although it prevents his knight from getting there, now his knight's coming to c2. So I've got to figure out a way to start a counterattack now, but I don't really like my position. I shouldn't have allowed his bishop to get where it got. So he was threatening knight c2, forking the rooks on a and e1. So now he's got the initiative for sure. And he's much better on time as well. So I need to come up with a plan. Just going to try to get my... Oh, that might trap my knight actually. Alright, I'm going to create some luft here. And his queen is totally coming to h3 now. Okay, this... I'm happier to see, I think. So I gotta reroute this horrible knight, so I'm thinking g2 to f4. But I want to put my rook back on a1 now, but I can't really do that until this knight is no longer a problem because the knight's currently guarding c2. So my only plan right now is to play knight g2, knight f4, try to see if I can trade off this bishop. The bishop still has plenty of ways to escape at this point. Like it can play bishop c2 now. Okay. Maybe he wants to sack this bishop and just claim that he's going to have a monster center. Bishop can still play bishop c2. I've got to play faster. So I'm going to try to get control over the A file at the very least. Yeah, kind of messed this position up. Gave him a good outpost for a few pieces. His bishop is still pretty bad, I think. And now he's going to try to win my bishop, I think, by playing knight c2. Which he does. And I'm just going to try to stay on the A file and give up this bishop. Guess I need to play faster. Maybe he plays b3 here. Plays b3 indeed. I'm gonna try to get my rook to somewhere where it can stay alive for a little while, but things aren't looking good, really. Okay. So now I'm threatening d5, I think. d5 bishop takes. I'm actually not sure. This looks dubious. I mean, my entire... the way that I play chess is dubious, so I don't know why I'm pretending like I even... Ugh. Resigns. Alright, I'd be interested to see, like... I'd be interested to see some moments from that game. Let's go back to my games. I'm being brought into another game. Alright, I'll play one more, but I want to go back and review that game as well. So I'm going to play a Karo Khan. I think if I go to profile while that's going on, I can run the analysis on the last game. So my opponent's taking a long time. The first move. Where do we see games? View the games. I think my opponent must have disconnected. There we go. Chess.com calls this opening the hillbilly attack. All right, so this just, I think he just pre-moved too early. Okay, so he's playing on, but he's a bishop down. Yeah, so this last game that I lost, this one, I want to look at the analysis of this game actually. Okay, we'll let that run and we'll see where I blundered here. Okay, I'm a bishop up. I'm just gonna start. I should develop pieces, but maybe I can try to develop with tempo here if he takes. He doesn't. Okay, so what's his idea now? Is just to play knight g5 or something like super aggressive? Yeah, knight g5. Okay. I have to be careful here too. Because now, alright, so like, let's see. If I play takes here, my worry is what happens after queen f3. So I could play this way, and then his queen takes on d4 instead. Then I just play knight c6. No, it's not so easy because I feel like I'm just playing horribly. So now queen takes c5. Let's go ahead and play like here. Hey, thanks, Tomas. All right, so let's try to figure this out really quickly. I'm up pieces, but I'm up a piece, but it's not feeling like as good as it should. So he's got to take back with the queen, I guess. Oh, so he just, luckily, he hangs the queen. All right, that game was kind of a throwaway by my opponent. In the last game was interesting. I didn't really ever have much of an advantage. Apparently, I had an opening advantage actually, and I blew it. I guess I could play c4 or c5. I mean, and trap his knight, which I didn't see. So c5 traps the knight because he can't go to a4, c4 because the bishop guards it, knight guards d5. Okay. So I totally blew that game. And then I really blew it with the move knight h5, knight h4, sorry, knight h4. Okay. Okay. So probably code for another half an hour, and let's see how far we can get. Maybe 15 minutes more coding, maybe a game of Geoguessr, and maybe another game of chess. If anyone wants to play chess, challenge me at Westman on Lee Chess if you feel like playing. I should keep Lee Chess open. Okay. So pseudo legal pawn move, checking is working. Is legal bishop move. So what we want to do for bishops is quite similar. I feel like current square bitboard is could be extracted as well. All right, so what we're going to do is this. Look forward to refactoring this as well. If move dot piece is piece dot white bishop, and if not, self dot board dot white bishop bb and current square bb return false. I should check explicitly this in the test as well, that we can't make an illegal move. I should say I just tested manually in Jupyter whether or not it was a legal move. Thanks, Sid Hunt. I will check that out. I promise. All right, so I extracted this is not pawn motion or attack. And why is this not a function? Because it's referencing self.board. All right, that's fine. So let's do the following. So if it's not a white bishop and I didn't extract this either. These if clauses could be taken away, right? Because we know at any given time who's moving. So I'll refactor that out later. But if it's a white bishop and if self dot is not bishop attack, move dot 2 square, return false. Otherwise return true. So bishop attacks in motion are the same as opposed to pawns. So here what we can say is def is not bishop attack 2 square. Do this. So if the move color is white, and if not, self.board.white bishop attacks. Do I not have white bishop attacks on the board? Oh no, I have it on the position instance. All right, that may need to get moved around as well a little bit. But if not, self.white bishop attacks and 2 square return false. Otherwise, if not, return false. And this is white to black. And this is the moving 2 square bitboard. Just going to go ahead and make these for the other pieces. So much of this just feels like it could just be in a map and looked up. And remember that these instances of attack bitboards on the position instance itself have already accounted for intersections with pieces. And if they're intersecting with the opponent's piece bitboard, the move is getting mutated to set the attack adder on it, and if it's intersecting with own pieces, then it's not getting added to the legal moves for that piece. So we should be taking care of that. All right, so is not bishop attack, is not knight attack. It's interesting to try to think of what to set on the instance. Like, if I set current move on the instance, then these types of checks become properties because I don't have to pass in anything like the 2 square. I can just check on the instance. But that's like sort of the opposite direction that I want to go. I want to move more functional and rely less on the state of this singleton position thing, but we'll see how that all goes. All right, so is not king attack. Knight, king, queen. King will have to have a special clause for castling. And also, the king's attack bitboard, if you will need to be intersected with the opponent's attacked squares bitboard. So basically the logical OR of all of its attacked squares, because a king can't move into an attacked square from any piece. So here we go. I love how I ended up here where I have all of these is not methods rather than is methods. And I don't love that is what I mean to say. All right, so let's see. Is legal move for a given move, determine if it is legal. Returns true if and only if it is legal given the current position state. All of these are going to be piece move, legality checking, helpers. I may make these just pure functions and have them pass in what they need from the position at some point. All right, so is legal pawn moves comes in here. Where is this is not pawns? Where is legal pawn move? Sorry. Oh, it's up here. So we want to actually move this and this back up here. By piece. Okay, cool. So I should add a rook move helper as well. All the helpers are doing is saying whether or not this move is actually intersecting with the pre-computed legal squares for a given piece, which get updated after every move is made, after every legal move is made. So it's not rook attack. Color to move. So here we just replace queen with rook. The fact that this is all effectively the same structure leads me to think that this could be greatly simplified into some kind of map or similar. And is not bishop attack? Do I not? Yeah, I make the bitboards up above, but I don't need to. I'll make them in the helpers, I guess. All right, returns true if the given pawn move is legal, i.e. one of the following is the case. Motion intersects with pawn motion forward. The 2 square is an attack and intersects with opponent piece or en passant target, which is pre-computed. Okay, returns true if the given bishop move is legal, i.e. 2 move is in the en passant target is part of the pawn attack squares bitboard at this point. Need to take into account the black bishop here, which again, totally inefficient, but white black, and if it's a black bishop, we got that going on, and then do the same here for rooks. Current square bitboard, self.move is a move. It returns a Boolean value. Move is if it's a white rook, otherwise if it's a black rook, white rook bitboard, black rook bitboard. So, and then here, if it's not a rook attack, rook attack is what intersects with the rook attacks bitboard. And this one is a typo. This should be black. 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 The same here. This one looks good. Do I have king? I do. Still need to get to castling though. Alright. So now I think I'm going to take another chess break. Chess programming break to play chess. And maybe I'll play a round of Geoguessr as well, because that's typically pretty fun. I feel like all this code for like the basic motion, like the motion of a sliding piece on an otherwise empty board, as chessprogramming.org always calls it, belongs in a separate class. This could come back out to bitboard helpers, basically. because it's a composition of these that make all of the sliding piece moves, like rook, bishop, and queen. Keep those in position, or maybe even some other class, and make position a bit more lightweight. Right now, position is becoming a catch-all for all of this piece motion bitboard composition, because it's where the motion is initiated, but it's not necessarily where all this code belongs. All right, another game of chess, one game of Geoguessr. All right, d4, I'm going to play. Okay, I'm going to play, I could play like a King's Indian setup. And so that's what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll just play. So I guess I could either play c6 followed by d5, play d5 immediately, or I could play d6. I'm going to play d6, knight d7. He's making a square for his bishop. Sometimes I put my rook on e1 in positions like this, and then I always wish it was back on, sorry, on e8, and then I always wish it was back on f8 when I need to push f5. So he'll probably play d5 here, I guess. Oh, that's interesting. All right, so I'm just going to take a center pawn and play a6, which is just a prophylactic move to keep his knight off of b5. Now, what? Like I said, I want to play rook e8, but I feel like every time I play rook e8, I want it back on f8 later, and I'm never in time. So I wonder if I can put pressure on d4. So it's his only, let's see. So I don't feel like I have a good plan here. My weakest pieces are this rook here on a8 and my bishop on c8. I think this might be totally anti-positional because he can maybe just play c5 here and get rid of one of my center pawns as well. And my knight maybe comes back to d7 and I haven't even accomplished anything. So I'm thinking that he might play c5. But if c5 and I try knight d5, knight takes, then c takes d. Okay, none of that even happened. But now he definitely wants to push c5, so I think he just prepared it by playing rook c1. And I've got like half the time on the clock. So I think I'm going to go back. And I think he's going to play c5 anyway. Okay, so he wants to reroute his knight. I'm just going to try to prevent it from happening if possible. This makes me now want to play e5 myself, which I think I can play. So I'm going to go for it. Take with the knight. The idea is I harass the bishop. And now what? Just put more pressure on this square. Now maybe he just plays knight d5. Okay, no, but I'm going to reroute my knight to d4 and try not to lose on time. If his black bishop moves, then I have to move my knight on f6 so that d4 is protected before my knight gets there. It's probably not even where the knight wants to be, honestly. So my position feels really loose right now for some reason. I have an isolated queen's pawn, but he doesn't have any center pawns. All right, so let's see, what can we do here? Oh, what a mess. I'm running low on time as well. Okay. Wow, can he play like g4 or something really aggressive here? I don't think he can play it yet. But I feel like I need to move quickly now. Okay, I'm gonna run out of time if I don't play more quickly. Let's get my other rook into the game. I feel like knight d5 is coming. No. Alright, so he's just making a few back and forth moves here. Maybe the knight comes back. Okay. Just gonna try to keep putting pressure without blundering anything. Okay. Oh, this could be bad because he has bishop d3. Okay, and the other way he has bishop here. So I'm gonna come back. Pre-move takes. He'll probably play rook e1. Rook e1 played. So we'll come back here. Do have some pre-moves. Okay, takes. Knight gets a decent outpost, and hopefully he doesn't move queen, or he doesn't. So now I got a fork here. No checkmate. It's coming down to the wire for sure. Okay. That bishop's really annoying. Alright, so now at least I can trade off a queen. And I probably don't have time for this. Yeah, so I lost in the end. Darn. Alright, good game. Okay. I'm gonna play one game of Geoguessr. And then maybe call it. When was this? Oh, must be a. Wow, they hashed the games. That's pretty cool, actually. So my browser just visited one of the previous games. All right, so let's play Diverse World, I think it is. Isn't there a Diverse World better or something like that? Got a slow search index. This is the better one. All right, so we'll go ahead and play rounds. Feeling a bit sluggish tonight, so maybe I'll bump it up to 1:30 per. All right, first location could be somewhere in Europe. Oof, pretty laggy. All right, so first impressions are like Central Europe. Maybe Spain. Route 51, it looks like. All right, let's see if there's any language on these signs here as well. Also, Sid Hunt, if you're still there, thank you for that. Hidden dip. All right, so it's English. So now I'm just guessing that we're actually in maybe England. Could also be like in Australia, perhaps. All right, but I'm gonna run out of time, so I'm just gonna drop it over in the UK. I'm still feeling like I should have looked more closely, but we're gonna put it over here for now. All right, we were in Northern Ireland. Not bad, 250 miles away. All right, so that looks like, isn't that, um, isn't that Cambodian? I think that's Cambodian. Apologies if I'm wrong about that. But so I don't run out of time just in case. Going to drop it in Cambodia until something else suggests otherwise. So let's look at that script again really quickly. I'm not entirely sure if that is correct or if it's Thai or Lao as well. So maybe it's Thai actually. It's not Lao, I think. And it could be, it's not Burmese either, or Myanmar. And my guy just went off the map. All right, I accidentally clicked off the map, but it was Thailand anyway, so that was mouse slip. Would have been closer. All right, so now that's Korean. So presumably we're in South Korea somewhere. So let's put this on the map. Question is where in South Korea with a minute to go. So we've got some big mountains to our west. So that makes me feel like we're going to be maybe somewhere on the eastern portion of South Korea. Samjuk. I'm going to put us there for now until something looks better. Would help to see a body of water as well. Man, this lag. Okay, well, the lag's not helping me, but I suspect that we are in South Korea. I'm going to put it more towards central South Korea, still to the east. Okay, I was closer actually where we were, but not bad. 68 miles away. All right, let's do another one. Okay. So we've got some serious mountains to the east. The sun is pretty well in the east at the moment, not really too far north or south. My gut reaction was like Chile or something, but the sun is in the south, so probably not Chile. Sun is pretty far in the south. Hey Tomas, right now I'm taking a break and playing a round of Geoguessr before continuing the chess engine. So this is a tough one actually. Where do we have mountains like this? Guessing Western Europe, but I could just be completely off base. It doesn't really look like Western Europe to me. Okay, it was Spain. Further south. Alright, is this the last round? This is the last round. Alright, we land right in front of a sign, so hopefully this one will help us. If I can get back with the lag. Okay, so I see some traditional Chinese, but also this interesting Catholic. This is pretty fascinating actually. So we see Chinese, but also rainforest waterfalls. So a mixture of English and traditional Chinese characters. So this could be Singapore. What else do we have here? I'm gonna run out of time. Tech Guan Cocoa Village. Unsure. The best guess I have right now is Singapore. Could be Taiwan as well. I'll put it in Taiwan until. But I'm really thinking that we're in Singapore or Malaysia, so we'll come down here somewhere. Okay, actually, we were in. Where is this? This isn't Brunei, is it? Technically, I guess this is part of Indonesia. Okay, interesting. got thrown off, I guess, by the presumably Catholic sign, because this is part of Indonesia. I believe that that is predominantly Islam. Although, okay, maybe this is part of the Philippines. All right, I'm just gonna figure out what where Sandakan is for sure. Malaysia, so not Indonesia, but its neighbor. Okay, that was fun. All right, what time is it? It's 8 o'clock. I'm gonna finish up our move legality checking for the other pieces. So we should have is legal move setup, and this checks for pawn move. Bishop, rook, knight, queen, king. So let's just go ahead and finish up the squares for the knights and the queens. Hey, Elsa N. It was indeed part of Malaysia. All right, so maybe I'll play one more Geoguessr, because Geoguessr is pretty fun. All right, white queen, black queen, and we need to actually update these to is not knight attack. And I want to actually, I'll probably do this off stream, but I want to refactor some things here so that we're making these assertions in the affirmative instead of the is not. That's just kind of the way it ended up as I worked through it, but is not rook, is not queen attack, is not queen attack. The other thing we have to make sure that we do is when it is a castle, update the piece map so that we switch around the rook's current location to the appropriate location, whether it's on the queen side or the king side. And the other thing that I wanted to point out here was, all right, queen, king, was the way that I'm representing the castling on the legal king side or queen side is as a tuple with the 0th or the first index. Also, this is a queen, not a king. Okay, king, and the king, stay the king. All right, so that looks good. Yeah, so when I'm doing the castling, let's take a look at that really quickly. Maybe I actually remove this self.kenCastle. Now here we go. All right, so I'm representing this as a list so that we can mutate it. The idea is that the tuple, yeah, it's a list now technically. It does return a tuple, but all right, so if the color to move is white and the king side is blocked, which is where we do the intersection with the castle route white king side with the black attack squares, and just do the other thing on the queen side, then I return 0, 0. This needs to be cleaned up, right? No, this just flips based on whether or not this has anything in it. And is this a bitboard? If this is a bitboard, it is, then what we can do is, rather than return this, what I think I want to do is return not any, numpy.any. So if it's a numpy uint of 0, this will return false. And anything other than 0 means there was an intersection. All right. Update, move, legality checking. Almost out of time. Thank you for everyone who watched this evening. I'm going to go out, I guess, with one more game of Geoguessr. The GitHub should be up to date. Thanks to Sidhant for the pull request, which I presume is for documentation, is what you mentioned. I'll take a look at that a bit later. I do have a new logo. This logo was just kind of made quickly. I guess we can update that as well. So Sidhant made a pull request here. I'll take a look at that a bit later. And resolve any merge conflicts. Take a look at what Sidhant changed here. The other thing that I'm going to do is add a new file. We'll do that later. I have a new logo. So next stream, you guys will see the new logo. And we'll play one more game of Diverse World here. Okay. So there's a guy, and is that a dog or a sheep? I can't really tell. Looks like maybe a goat. All right, we have red soil here as well. All right, running low on time here. Let's see if we can get up to a sign really quickly. Okay, English, Tama. In Malay school, Tama. I'm going to guess. Where could this be? Well, I'm about to run out of time here. This is in Kenya. Kenya, okay. Not so well on that one. Okay, so that script is Lao. No, not Lao, sorry. That script is perhaps Burmese or Myanmar. So the question is where in Myanmar? With 55 seconds left. It's definitely a populated area. See lots of little shops and things. Lots of little shops. Okay, geographically speaking, if I could get a grip on some of the lag here. Let's see, with 15 seconds. Look like to the north maybe there were some hills. If that's the case, maybe we're in northern Myanmar. Kind of feel like we might be in southern Myanmar. Whoa, we were in Sri Lanka. After all that. The script threw me off. Alright, so not a great Geoguessr round. Bingora, Mitchell Lane. So we've got kind of arid looking terrain. Really not sure about this one actually. Really not sure about this one. I mean, it looks like it could be like Italy or southern France, something like that, but the name kind of threw me off. Maybe Spain. No, it can't be. This one I have a feeling I'm just like way off. Yeah, Australia. Okay, that's embarrassing. All right, so worst one yet. So what does this look like? Not sure just yet, although we have a big body of water out to the north, northeast. Big body of water. Tropical. Maybe somewhere in Central America. Looks really beautiful here. Could also be somewhere in Southeast Asia, I suppose. Could also be many other places. Okay, 10 seconds left, and I'm now just getting to where the language is. I'm going to run out of time. And doesn't matter, I would have been way off anyway. Philippines. Okay, is this the last one? I hope so, because I played horribly this round. Alright, so we've got some really heavy vegetation. Lots of motorbikes. Looks almost like we could be back in Malaysia again. With the trees. Okay, any clues with the village? Not great. Still the best guess. The best guess I have at the moment is Malaysia. Of course, I'm just influenced by the fact that we were just there, I believe, or we were in the Philippines maybe. But I'm going to guess the northern Philippines again. Here with 10 seconds left. Wouldn't be surprised if I'm completely off again. Oh, and we have flags that I can't spin around and see in time. Okay, well, close. Malaysia it was, it looks like. Or is this part of Indonesia? Bandung is part of Indonesia. So presume this is Indonesia as well. Palembang. Let's take a look. Palembang is in Indonesia, so yeah. Okay, well, that's all about it for this evening. Thank you all for tuning in. The code is up on GitHub. Next stream, now that we have legal move checking set up, I'll fix any bugs that we encounter off stream. And then after that, yeah, I thought Vietnam 2 for a minute. But yeah, for next stream, hopefully castling will be set up